So the light is the Pokemon, the darkness is the people. That's true.
That checks out. Yeah. I can't be mad about it.
No notes.
Welcome to Wow If True, the podcast of your wildest memes.
We're here to dissect the entire internet, something normal to want and possible to achieve. I'm science fiction author, not your attorney, and job quitter, Isabel J. Kim.
Woo! And I'm Amanda Silberling, an internet culture reporter and not a job quitter. However, I am a 100th episode celebrator. Anyone could be famous on the internet, so why not us after 100 episodes?
I can't believe we got to 100 episodes, honestly. Like, that's a lot. That's 100.
I like how everybody starts a podcast in the pandemic, but we did it.
But we finished a podcast.
But we're not
we
done.
continued a podcast throughout the pandemic.
Yeah, there was a point when, vibes were low, just because, in the grand arc of creating a thing, and I was like, what if we just stop after 100? But this was like a year ago. And then now I'm like, I don't want to stop.
And now, psych, we have to talk about Pokemon.
Yeah, now the Pokemon leaks are happening.
God. Okay, so we were going to do something fun and wow, we did 100 episodes for the 100th episode because it's 100 episodes, go us. Unironically, if you haven't made something every 2 weeks for 3 years, you don't understand how much work it is to consistently make something for 3 years.
Yeah, I'm proud of us. Genuinely, go us. And I mean, we'll get more into the next episode because we're pushing our 100th episode victory lap to 101 because the horrors are happening.
They're not even the horrors. These are the wonders, Amanda.
Okay.
Okay, so if you don't know what's going on, the Pokemon leaks happened, and of course, we have to talk about the Pokemon leaks because you know that we both like Pokemon and that Amanda still plays Pokemon Go. Calling you out for being a Pokemon Go enthusiast in 2024.
I recently got to level 45.
Oh my god.
And the thing about Pokemon Go is that the level up system is it's exponential. So every time you level up, it becomes way harder to level up. Mm-hmm. So I was probably level 44 for a year and a half.
What the fuck?
And I'm going to be level 45 for the rest of my life. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay. I have more questions, but I'll get to them later. Okay, so what are we talking about when we talk about the Pokemon leaks, in this context? Because every once in a while, people do love to go to a game studio and be like, hey, what are you doing? What's the secret sauce? And then they leak it on the internet. In this context, basically, Game Freak confirmed that they were hacked back in August and that this was a third-party unauthorized access to the servers, which happened back then. This hack included employee data, company email addresses. Again, both of those are not good. Those shouldn't be leaked. But also source code from previous games, unused Pokemon designs, and things from future games. People think that this was a social engineering hack. At the time of us recording, I haven't really seen any conclusive evidence either way.
What does a social engineering hack mean? A gamer girl is hey, give me your data, and a gamer guy is okay.
Yeah, so essentially, yes. But more it means that somebody spoofed an email address or contacted someone who's an employee or pretended to be an employee asking someone else for another employee. Social engineering is basically the practice of using social hacks, basically telling people that you are someone else or getting your way into a situation by using social tactics as opposed to brute forcing some code or jimmying a lock.
Yeah.
This would be on the easiest end, this would be you wear a vest and then you get into a building because they think you're a construction worker.
I wish that this was considered ethical in journalism. It's not considered, in journalism, you, it's not allowed to misrepresent yourself. And I really,
What would you be pretending to be if this was ethical?
Well, this came up one time when my dream story in 2021 was I wanted to learn more about the labor conditions of people doing content moderation in Horizon Worlds, which is Meta's social VR platform. the thing is that that story killed itself before I could get information because nobody uses Horizon Worlds. When it first launched, they had like IRL content moderators like walking around. One time I was like trying to figure out what was going on, and I went and I talked to this like content moderator in VR, and I was like, so do you like work for Meta? And he was like, no, I'm like a contractor. Like, but then he said what the contractor thing was, but then I didn't like, I like forgot it because I was just like panicking about being in VR. Mm-hmm. And then I tried like introducing myself as a journalist to more moderators, and they were like, I'm not going to talk to you. And I was like, okay.
Okay, so you would have pretended not to be a journalist to talk to these content moderators.
Yes, but I just think it's funny that this story became not relevant because nobody uses Horizon Worlds.
I do love that. It's like, yeah, this service, nobody's using it, so it's fine. Okay, let's talk about Pokemon. So, basically what happened here is that a bunch of shit just got dumped on the internet. The shit is all in Japanese, and I took a look through some of the leaked documents. I did not go through the immediate source of this leaked documents on account of it is in Japanese, and also it's files from 4chan and shit, and I was scared about downloading them.
Oh yeah, I'm afraid of 4chan.
But yeah, some of this has been logged in like various locations. Basically, parts have been translated, like, and this is on like the various Pokemon wikis, Twitter, like the Reddit PokeLeaks subreddits, because there's apparently like multiple of those. Mm-hmm. And basically people are having a field day because a lot of this stuff is really weird lore stuff that was never meant to make it out of development. And also like, oh, here's other sprites and things that could have been made but didn't get made. And I think that stuff is sort of interesting. And the other stuff that's on here is like, there's a lot more like forward-looking stuff, as in like, here's maybe what future games look like. And I haven't looked a ton into that yet because I thought that was a little bit less interesting. And we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about the meme of like, oh, one of them is like Latina. One of the girls is now. It's like, oh, confirmed. And racism ? And we're not going to talk about the personal information stuff because I think it's weird to talk about Game Freak employees.
Yeah,
like, that feels weird.
They probably have enough crisis in their life right now.
Yeah, so the stuff I thought was more interesting to talk about here was, first of all, Pokemon that didn't make the final cut, because I think that says something interesting about what is a Pokemon and what is not a Pokemon.
Yeah.
Like, and the Pokemon design aesthetics. And related to that, some of the very spooky Pokemon art that never made it to Final Sprite, like, why is the Pokemon art so spooky? Or are we just seeing the spooky stuff because people are pulling out the spooky stuff and going, look, it's spooky. And I think that's also kind of interesting to talk about in terms of, like, the people who are making Pokemon are going at it from, let's create a lot of creative stuff and then create a video game, I think, more than we need to make a video game for kids. Because a lot of the stuff that was leaked here is stuff from, like, basically, like, I think Gen 3 or Gen 4, whichever one, like, Diamond and Pearl is. So that's interesting, along with kind of the Pokemon mythology stuff, because there's a whole lot of, like, cosmology documentation. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is you can see them figuring out in real time which Pokemon are legendaries or which Pokemon are, like, retroactively legendaries. Related to that, the weird mythology. Now, note, I think this should be a Spirits episode. I think Spirits should talk about the Pokemon mythology because we are definitely not going to get as deep into it as it deserves.
No, literally,
like, they should do that. Literally,
in the Multitude Slack, I sent the message. If I hated Amanda and Julia, I would say Spirits episode on weird Pokemon lore from the leaks. However, I do not hate Amanda and Julia. 7 hours later. Bad news. Wow, if true episode on weird Pokemon lore from the leaks.
Wait, that's good. That's kind of what I want to cover today, and we're probably going to mostly talk about the Pokemon mythology because we got to talk about Typhlosion. Bringing it back to memes, we got to talk about Typhlosion.
I love how the Pokemon leaks, like, half of it is like, hey, in Gen 3, the water Pokemon was supposed to be like a little guy with an inner tube. Isn't that cute? And then it's like the Typhlosion of it all. Which maybe this is a good point to say that this episode will include mentions of Pokemon non-consensually having sex with people.
It's fine.
Just a warning, a content warning.
Also a warning, I'm going to talk about how in AO3 there is fic about Pokemon having sex with people, and hold on, I'll get into this later. But
it's like,
I just had a lot of curse knowledge from my research on this.
As someone pointed out on Twitter, it's like, we should have known this. Like, Lopunny exists.
Hey, before we get into it, do you think it's ethical to fuck a Pokemon in the Pokemon universe? They're sentient. Is Mr. Mime Ash's dad?
Okay, yes, Mr. Mime is Ash's dad. No, it's not ethical. Okay, I don't know. It is like a weird space where, like, okay, here's a really hot take, Isabel.
Okay, I'm excited for you.
I don't think that human beings in the real world should have sex with animals.
Crazy
hot take.
Crazy hot take.
I do see how Pokemon are not a direct analog of animals because they are sentient. However, I feel like, listen, call me a traditionalist. I think that people should have sex with beings that are the same species as them.
If you look at the Pokemon cosmology, there's a lot of stuff there about, like, are Pokemons and people the same thing?
Oh my god. I mean, listen, this is coming from someone who, like, my nickname is Ralts. And by that, I mean, like, 3 people call me it, but it's people that I work with professionally.
That's good.
Whenever I do, like, anything with Multitude, they're like, Amanda Silberling. And then I recorded something recently that was like, Amanda and Eric from Multitude were not involved in this recording, but other Multitude people were, and they were, like, calling me Amanda, and I was like, this is weird. I'm Ralts in this social space.
That's so funny. Guy who's inadvertently made themselves a Pokemon. Okay, let's talk about Pokemon.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Pokemon. So somebody put together this really good spreadsheet, which I think we're going to link because it's a good spreadsheet.
I love spreadsheets.
Even though I think this will be harder to edit, I do think us both looking at the spreadsheet is the move.
Yeah. Tota. This is podcasting. I'm just going to say names of Pokemon that don't exist.
Oh my god. So this is interesting because it's very much like there are a bunch of Pokemon here that are both either turned into actual Pokemon or just get, like, nixed. And it's interesting when you see the notes on why this Pokemon gets scrapped. And what's interesting is sometimes I think they're getting scrapped. Like, the 3 reasons that it looks like stuff gets scrapped mostly is either A, it is, like, too similar to an existing Pokemon. B, it's too much, like, not like a Pokemon. And, like, not like a Pokemon means either it's, like, too much like just an animal or it's too much like just the thing. And I don't really know how they're using that to, like, figure that out because, like, a lot of Pokemon are just like, there's the ice cream Pokemon. He's just ice cream.
Yeah, like, that doesn't make sense because a lot of, oh my god, I like how for Duskull they wrote, looks like Shy Guy.
Yeah, right?
No, I mean, so there's a Pokemon that was, I guess it turned into Sharpedo. It's called Skark.
Yeah, and it's just a shark. And I'm like, why did that one get to stay? Wait, okay.
Well, no, that one didn't get to stay because I mean it looks way different than Sharpedo did.
But it gets turned into, like, a shark thing. Like they're like, we like the concept of a shark.
Or how Swablu was yassified before.
Yeah, right. I'm kind of glad they got rid of look at 320 Galbi or, like, Biskyal. Because
interesting.
Well, because I'm kind of like, they're going for, like, a Gyaru thing, but the way they did it does look like, it looks like racist caricatures of black people, and if they were selling this to West, it would not read as Gyaru culture. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, they already did racism with Jinx, so...
Yeah, we can't have true racism. The leaks also confirmed that, like, the mega evolution of Jinx was supposed to exist before somebody was like, absolutely fucking not, we're not doing this.
Yeah, that's so funny. Oh god. Yeah, what's also crazy is, like, I didn't know about the like, original Jinx until, like, I was an adult, because I think by the time I played Pokemon was when they already changed the coloring of Jinx.
Mm-hmm.
But Jinx was originally, like, literally a black woman. And
yeah,
it's bad. And now Jinx is a purple woman.
It's fine. So 325 and 326 I think are funny because they're like, 325 is Rikugan, which maybe turns into Lileep later, but they're like, I like the idea, but... And they just trail off.
Wait, and then the next one is, like, a mermaid, and it says, too dramatic to be a Pokemon concept.
Which is interesting, because it's like, what is making this more dramatic than, like, other Pokemon?
It's also weird to say it's too dramatic because, like, the amount of Pokemon whose lore is, like, Cubone, where it's like he wears his mother's mask.
Yeah, like, some of the shit is just extremely dramatic to begin with. Oh,
yeah.
334 Kujata is also the one I wanted to talk about because the notes for it are... I cannot stress to you guys enough, this just looks like a peacock. It's just a peacock, and the notes are... It's a literal peacock. I need something special for the feathers. So
well, they ended up having the Quaxley evolution.
True. Something special for the feathers.
I think another funny thing is that Latias, which is a legendary Pokemon, like, kind of looked like a Delibird evolution and or a Blaziken evolution, which you would never think based on the actual Latias that's in the games. Mm-hmm. But it's funny that, like, this is a legendary Pokemon.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's interesting how much they changed from their origins. Oh, wait, another thing I want to point out here, unrelated, is that, you know how Spheal is like a ball?
Yeah.
There was supposed to be a Pokemon called Penpin, which is the pin to Spheal's ball, and it's like a penguin.
Amazing. Yeah, I see Penpin. This is great. It looks like it might have been the pin to Spheal's ball.
Like, that's just good.
Okay. That would be so good. Like, that one is the only one so far that makes me, like, legitimately mad that it's not in the game.
Bowling. Just bowling. Okay. So the only other thing I want to talk about here, other than that, you guys should go look at this yourself, and I don't know how interesting it was listening to me and Amanda just go, wow, there's Pokemon!
I think this is what people want.
True. This is what the people crave. There was supposed to be a Pokemon named Evoluto. Yeah. Which was supposed to be able to randomly evolve into any Pokemon. That's kind of like, people are not 100% sure about that, but based on like the information that's been reported. And basically it's like, when it evolves, it changes into a different form, which has become a focus of attention for Pokemon researchers. Although its mouth and ears are not visible, it has been confirmed that it reacts to sound and light.
It looks like if you take, like, a Cyndaquil, but take everything off of it, including colors that aren't yellow.
Yeah, it just looks incredibly unfinished.
Yeah.
And which I think is the purpose in this case, where it's very much like, yeah, this guy's supposed to turn to other things. But that would have been a crazy Pokemon to put in the game, right? Like, imagine getting that and it evolves into a legendary and you're like a third of the way through the game.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume it can maybe only evolve into Pokemon that are, like, able to be evolved into.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, maybe, like, you couldn't evolve into a Charmander, but you could evolve into a Charmeleon. But I don't know. I like the idea if that is the case. Like, if it can evolve into a Mewtwo, no. But if it evolves into, like, other stuff. I really like, when I originally saw this, I thought it was, like, fan art, but the original drawings for Absol were, like, it's a yin-yang.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's neat. Wait a minute. Okay, I'm sorry. We're still doing the part of the podcast where we simply look at a spreadsheet.
Go ahead.
For Latias and Latios, it says from Plato's work Kritos and from Plato's work Timaeus.
Yeah, like literally they're reaching back to fucking Greek philosophers and shit. And it's like, that's so much more like thought than I thought they were putting into Pokemon.
Critias, one of Plato's late dialogues, recounts the story of the mighty kingdom Atlantis and its attempt to conquer Athens, which failed due to the ordered society of the Athenians. Critias is the second of a projected trilogy of dialogues, preceded by Timaeus and followed by Hermocrates. I don't know how this relates to Pokemon, but that's what those things are, according to Wikipedia.
In a weird way, this makes sense, though, because a lot of Pokemon cosmology and a lot of the Pokemon like lore is very much related to analogous things on Earth on account of the people who are making Pokemon are drawing very deliberately from Earth concepts because we live in society. This actually goes pretty smoothly into segue into my next point, which is that like there's maybe a dozen, probably more versions of the Pokemon cosmology that were dropped in the data leak. I've been looking at specifically one of the Pokemon like wikis, like collations of everything where they've been translating stuff, and they all essentially show similar or like slightly variated versions of the Pokemon creation myth. I read through all the ones that had been translated, which was a significant amount of them, and what was interesting is like the places where these myths diverge from each other, where they're clearly trying to work out whether Pokemon and people are formed from the same thing, are formed from different things, met in some sort of conflict, whether Pokemon and people were originally in conflict, whether people were created by Pokemon God. Like, they go through a lot of iterations to try and hash out the ultimate Pokemon cosmology for, like, Diamond and Pearl. And it's clear that they're thinking about the fact that this is going to affect Pokemon going forward. That they're trying to build this as a Pokemon myth, like creation myth, that will be used as canon going forward. So in one sense, I don't think we need to take the leaks as anything canon, because it is really drafts of people trying to figure out how these stories go and what makes sense to show to children. What I also think is interesting about this is that they're creating essentially a creation myth for children that is only being read through in-game texts. Yeah. That's an interesting concept, because that does say, like, how do you explain creation to kids? And the other thing here is that these are Japanese kids that they're building it for. And I think they're thinking about Japanese kids more than they're thinking about kids globally, because this is very specifically from Diamond and Pearl, because Japan doesn't have cultural Christianity in the same way that the US or more of the Western world does. And it's not exactly like a Christ analog, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but isn't there...
Or like a Genesis thing.
I do think there is a church in Diamond and Pearl, though. Yeah. I'm looking this up.
Right, there's like a Pokemon church, for Arceus. No, but actually...
No, yeah, because I remember seeing this and thinking, like, even in Pokemon world, we're in, like, a Christianity-centric world? Like, really?
No,
where's,
but I think...
Where's the Pokemon synagogue?
Do you know what I mean? I think
Litwick is Jewish.
You just declared that, okay? Sure, I'll incorporate that into my belief system.
Yeah, I was just thinking to myself, what's a Jewish Pokemon? Because Delibird is literally Santa. Delibird is a Christian Pokemon.
Yeah, but, like, the thing is, like, Santa is not tied to Christianity in Japan the same way it is in the States.
Really? Well, Christmas that's interesting.
Christmas in Japan is, like, a romantic holiday. It's not a religious one.
Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't know this.
Like, it's like how in Persona 5, that Christmas you spend with your significant other that you've made in that game. It's not like a family holiday. It has vague romantic undertones.
Is it like Valentine's Day?
A little bit. I mean, you've got Valentine's Day still, and you've got White Day, and White Day is the opposite of Valentine's Day, in the sense that, like, now you're supposed to do something nice for the boy, but on Valentine's Day you do something nice for the girl. Does this help?
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Huh. This is also very, like, heteronormative, and I may be mixing some stuff up because it's been a while since I've looked into Japanese romance concepts. It's been
when you said the opposite of Valentine's Day,
we hate them now.
It's a day for your enemies.
In Korea, if you're doing, like, anti-Valentine's Day shit, you're supposed to eat jjajangmyeon, which is like sauce, which is like black bean sauce, and it's like, nice. it's dark. It's nice. Dark and like salty and delicious. Oh, the other thing you're supposed to do in Christmas in Japan is eat fried chicken. So as you can see, this is why I'm saying that this is not tied to Christianity.
Okay. Delibird, but not the Pokemon Church. The Pokemon Church is a church.
Wait, shit, did they make it a bird because of the fried chicken?
Whoa.
That would be funny.
That's very possible.
So, okay, I'm going to read you a Pokemon creation myth. Note that there's, like, a zillion of these, and they're all a little bit different. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how they're different, but this is the first one that's on the page. In the beginning, there was a swell of chaos. Everything slowly blended together, and all was vague. At one point, a giant egg appeared within. For a long time, the egg trembled there. Like, and that's clearly, like, it's clearly you're hatching an egg.
But what came first, the egg or the Pokemon?
Well, clearly the egg. But what's interesting is sometimes they include the egg, and sometimes they don't include the egg. Sometimes things are just chaos beforehand, but sometimes they're like, let's put a little, like, thing about the egg and how you have to, like, carry it, and then it starts to shake. An even longer time passed. At some point, the swell ceased, and the egg tumbled over and broke. The absolute divinity Asu was born, and then Asu is referring to Arceus.
Arceus, the god of all Pokemon.
And also of people. The scattered fragments of the shell transformed into titans. One after another, they attacked Arceus, who had scarcely been born. However, Asu began to grow before their eyes and successively defeated them. A fierce battle raged, but at last, Asu crushed all of the titans. The wounded Asu then created offshoots of himself. The right and left halves of Asu's body differed, so he constructed two offshoots. Asu gathered the husks of the defeated titans and poured in his own blood. Light brimmed from the offshoot that resembled his left half, so Asu named Ea the god of light. Darkness crept from the offshoot that resembled his right half, so Asu named it, like, Ea the god of darkness. And this is clearly like a Dialga Palkia thing, because if you keep going forward, then it's like, oh, one of these, it's obvious.
Yeah.
Aya and Ia differed in shape, but they loved and communed with each other and conceived many children. However, there was still no place that they could call the world. These fragile children, with nowhere to go, died one after another. Aya and Ia, lost in despair, dreamed of creating a world where all things could live in health and abundance. They summoned their children, the eye god Ray, the heart god I, and the voice god Hai. And this is clearly like Miss Spirit, Uxie, and Azelf.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because this is that game.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with the cosmology of Pokemon beyond this, it's basically just like Dialga and Palkia are like time and space, and it's just, it's just that.
When Ray awoke, all things appeared there, colors and contours were born. When I wished, all things were felt there, a sense of calm radiated outward. When Hai cried out, all things shook there, a joyful tone began to reverberate. Aya and Ia granted the three the seed of life and commanded them to nurture it. When the three formed a ring and offered up their prayers, the seed of life began to bud. The bud matured before their eyes and became a giant tree of life. However, the tree of life, which continued to grow everywhere, at last filled up every nook and cranny. And no one was able to move anymore. The three called upon their father, Aya, and their mother, Ia, for aid. Aya and Ia communed with each other once more and conceived three children. The sky god, Rayquaza, the earth god, Groudon, and the ocean god, Kyogre were born.
Let's go!
Rayquaza wounded its body around the tree of life. Groudon and Kyogre used their own bodies to strike it down. At last, the tree of life was defeated and shattered into three. By the way, insane cosmology here, right? Like, if you think about the concept of we grew the world and now we must destroy it.
Yeah.
Ray, I, and Hai were saddened at the tree meeting its end like this and offered up their prayers. In doing so, the shattered tree of life transformed into the sky, the earth, and the ocean. Rayquaza transformed into a pillar crowned by the heavens, its shadow ascending into the sky.
And that's Giratina.
No. It turned into Dragonite, Snorlax, and Tyranitar, the three gods that sustained the heavens. The atmosphere enveloped the heavens, and the stars and planets twinkled. So the other thing here is that you can see that it's clear that they're trying to figure out which of the Pokemon are going to become relevant in the cosmology.
Yeah, and I think this is interesting too, because like I've seen diagrams people made about this, but like the actual story, I'm like, that's wild. I think I read like a really bad translation of it that like made no sense, but because like in Pokemon lore, like people will call Pokemon like Dragonite or like Tyranitar like pseudo legendaries just because they're really, really, really strong Pokemon, but they aren't legendary Pokemon as designated by like the game. So It's interesting to see that pseudo legendary is actually a real thing and not like a fan thing.
Yeah, it's like clear that like they're trying to think about which of the Pokemon that already exist or are going to become relevant later or need a place in the cosmology. And like they don't necessarily go down these routes, but you can see that like the seeds of this sort of shit exist in the way that these Pokemon play in game.
I think it's also funny because like the trios of legendaries are usually like Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza. It's like sky, earth, water. And then you have like Tyranitar, Snorlax, Dragonite.
Yeah, like why are they here? Wait,
I don't know. One of them is sleepy. One of them flies. One of them stomps.
And then Groudon transformed into the solid rock that covered the ground. The thunderous roar that passed through the ground turned into Dab, San, and Godon, the three gods that sustained the earth. I don't know what those are, but I'm imagining it's like the Reggie ones.
Oh yeah, I think that is.
Which, like, okay, so the Reggie Rock, Reggie Ice, I forget the last one.
Registeel.
And
then there's like Regigigas.
Yeah, God. Well, so you can find these by doing a lot of like annoying tactics in, I believe it's either Sapphire or it's like it's a Ruby Sapphire. It's Gen 3, yeah. And you just have to do like a lot of like annoying shit to find them. Well, the earth quickened and the mountains squirmed. Kyogre transformed into the waterways that held the ocean. The ripples that disappeared into the great sea turned into Latias, Metagross, and Latios. And I'm like, weird pull.
Okay.
Why is Metagross there?
Yeah, these are all... Okay, they're all psychic in some way. Latios and Latias are Psychic Dragon, and Metagross is Psychic Steel. But Latios and Latias are like Play-Doh, and they're legendaries. Which we know now that they're inspired by Plato, weirdly.
But like, you see what I mean? Where like they're trying to figure out where the Pokemon that they're making fit into the cosmology.
And then Metagross is just there.
Why is he there? Okay, the 3 gods that sustained the ocean. The ocean filled up with water and the waves murmured. In this manner, the world was born. Aya and
Metagross.
Aya and Ea and the other gods were greatly pleased at this and sent their offspring to live within it. This peaceful world was paradise for the children of the gods. These divine children continued to multiply, altering their powers and speech little by little all the while. At some point, the gods began to call those living in the world by 2 names. The divine children who resembled the Great Father, Aya, were called Pokemon. The divine children who resembled the Great Mother, Ea, were called people.
What?
Which is, yeah, you see what I
mean? Wait, so, okay, again, which of those is Dialga and Palkia?
It's unclear.
So are we children of time or space? We will not know.
Okay, well, if we do like the light with Palkia, which is space, because Palkia is like a lighter, you know what I mean? Like the vibes.
Yeah, Palkia is like white and Dialga is like navy.
So the light is the Pokemon, the darkness is the people. That's true.
That checks out. Yeah. I can't be mad about it.
No notes.
No notes.
But, like, you see what I mean, where it's like, oh, like, some of the cosmology is very much saying that Pokemon and people stem from the same source. We are all the same thing at the beginning. Therefore, in the legends of the past, they did fuck, and it was fine.
Okay, but it's also, like, we come from the same universe and the same, like, planet as like horses, but that doesn't mean you should fuck a horse.
Okay, real talk. I think a lot of what these legends and like a lot of this cosmology is grappling with is, like, to put it crudely, whether Pokemon are food or fucking. Like is this a person or is this?
But I think they're both, because
that's even more fucked up. You shouldn't do that.
Because isn't there like evidence in the games that people like eat Pokemon? Mm-hmm. Like, didn't we discuss this with the whole Brian David Gilbert of it all?
Yeah, we did. When the absolute divinity Asu, who had awoken at last, looked upon the world filled with his descendants, he promised even more fertile earth and prosperity. So that's the first one. And there's a lot more of these that are all kind of similar in some ways, different in others. Sometimes the eggs exist, sometimes the egg doesn't exist. If you look at a different one, there's another one where, like, As desired the genesis of the world, but the effort needed was far too great and utmost difficult. So Oz produced 3 offshoots that divided its own power into 3. The god of light, Aya, radiates and shines on all things. The god of time, Ea, rouses and manages all things. The black titan destroys all things, returning them to null. And that's clearly Giratina.
Yeah. I feel like I saw things that Giratina was like the shadow over Rayquaza.
All of the cosmology in here is so speculative that it's... Wait, do you want to hear another one? Do you want to hear one that's weird?
Yes. Hello, and welcome to the mid-roll of the centennial, the 100th episode. Congratulations, WoW if true, and congratulations to you, because as cheesy as it is, we would not be doing this without the audience. You guys make it fun to do the work it takes to make a podcast, and I think we said this in 101 next episode when we like actually talk about the like OMG 100 episode things instead of Pokemon fucking. But genuinely, like, my favorite thing about having a podcast is that we have curated this community of people who have the same sense of humor as us and care about the same things as us and are like the same level of weird as us. So thanks to you guys. But in honor of our 100th episode, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. I'm sorry. I just complimented you and then was like, by the way. However, by the way, I want you to think of, do you have a friend in your life who's like a deranged internet weirdo? Or maybe they're not a deranged internet weirdo. Maybe they're just someone who's interested in things like how tech is shaping our lives and Chapel Roan ? Pokemon ? And they think that people like me and Isabel are funny. I want you to go into your phone right now and text your friend, I think you should listen to WoW of True podcast. I am not typing this because Amanda told me to. I am not being held captive. Ask me to blink once if I'm okay. And then you don't blink. Try to communicate that via text. I don't know what to tell you, but on iMessage you can, like, do fun text effects on things now. So, I don't know. I mean, I think I've really set you up for success here. And speaking of setting you up for success, you know when you are applying to a job and you attach your resume, but then you have to, like, still input the text, and it's really weird, and then none of the resume reading things actually, like, get the content from your computer, like, correctly? Attach Your Resume is a new podcast from Multitude, and it is not about the annoying things of attaching your resume. However, the name does nod to the reality that jobs in creative fields are weird and hard to get, and people who work in those fields, like me and Isabel, have weird journeys to get there. So, Attach Your Resume is a brand new show that interviews online creators about how their jobs work and how they got there. You can hear the personal stories behind seismic events in digital media, #pivot to video, and learn what concrete steps we can take to build a sustainable media landscape. Hosted by longtime podcasters and business owners Eric Silver and Amanda McLaughlin, Attach Your Resume proves that the best credential for deciding the future of media is actually making stuff. They'll have new episodes coming out every Thursday until, this is literally what it says in the document, until they run out of episodes and have to go make more. But honestly, they've made a lot of episodes, which I know personally because I was on the podcast. I did talk about Laos on the podcast. Particularly, I told the story of when I got in trouble with the communist government in Laos because my job sucked and did not protect me. And you can hear that soon. I don't know when my episode is coming out, but the other sorts of things you're getting are, like, one of the guys who started Defector, like, how do worker-owned media businesses work? I think it's a fascinating show. If you like when Isabel and I talk about, like, weird labor stuff and our weird jobs, you will love it. Anyway, back to another show that you love, Pokémon fucking.
This was a time when the world did not have a definite shape. This was a time when the boundaries between gods, people, and Pokemon were blurred. The absolute god Oz gave birth to the giant who shared its raging power in order to create the ultimate world. Do you like that as I read these, I get more and more dramatic?
Yes.
Okay, good. The giant had the power to destroy, consume, and purify everything. Through the power of the giant, all walls were broken down and the world expanded. Nice. There was one man. One day, in the land where the man lived, so this is a world where the land already exists, there was a wounded woman lying on the ground. The man took the woman home and cared for her. Before long, the two fell in love, and when the woman was completely healed, she became pregnant with 2 children. After a while, she gave birth to twins. Then the woman transformed into a divine figure and began to speak. I am the god named Us. Now we need to pause. We've already gotten to the Pokemon and human fucking.
In context, like, person turning into Arceus or whatever and, like, having kids is, like, it's weird, but, like, whatever. But as we will get into after we've been recording for almost an hour, there's fucking.
There's fucking. I think what's interesting is that this is very much, like, in tune with, like, Japanese mythology, but also in, like, Greek mythology and in general, like, global mythological traditions of you bring a guy into your house and that guy turns out to be way weirder than you expected.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, out of context, reading these myths that involve, like, very disturbing relations between humans and Pokemon, it's like, oh my god, that's crazy. And then when I sent them to Julia, our resident mythology expert, she was like, yeah, this is, like, pretty normal.
Yeah, it's like, this is still a thing that happens. Okay, I'm gonna finish this. I am the god named Us. I lived in a place that is different from here, but I was driven away from that place by the giant. Because the giant is a part of me, I cannot kill it. The giant destroys and devours everything, and eventually it will descend upon this world. Until that day, I want you to take care of these children. The only ones who can kill the giant are those who have the same power as me, that is, these children who have the power of God, people, and Pokemon. Also, it's always crazy when they just drop a, like, it's Pokemon in here. Yeah. Until then, you're like, yeah, sure, mythology, and that's like, but Pokemon. Yeah. When Oz finished speaking, it disappeared in front of the man's eyes. The man named the twins. He named them the words he felt when he saw Oz's true form. Aya, the word for light, and Ia, the word for time. With their father's love, the twins continued to grow healthily. When the twins were nearly their father's height, they spoke these words to him in unison. They don't say what the words are here, by the way, it just cuts off. Then the giant arrived. Color, sound, and peace disappeared from the area. People and Pokemon disappeared. So this is also a world that already has Pokemon in it.
Yeah, that doesn't... Okay, yeah, I'm guessing this is Giratina also.
Yeah. Beyond the nothingness, the giant howled. When the giant spotted the twins, it attacked them in a rampage. Without thinking, the father jumped out, sacrificing himself to protect his children from the giant. The father used up all his strength. Then, Aya and Ia's bodies began to change. Aya's human body split open, and 4 strong limbs stretched out. Its upper arm shone like a diamond. Ia's human body split
diamond
open.
And pearl, there we go.
Yeah, and 2 supple limbs grew out. Its shoulders and back were covered like a pearl-like sphere. Aya and Ia, whose bodies transformed into a large dragon-like figure, leaped at the giant. After a long battle, the giant fell before Aya and Ia. Aya and Ia rushed over to their father's corpse and howled loudly. There, the absolute god Oz descended and said these words: "Though the body has perished, its soul will not." This is all, like, isn't this all, like, just so dramatic for something that is, like, Pokemon?
It's just, like, we have this, and then as we will get into, I promise, and then we have Typhlosion.
Yeah. Though the body has perished, its soul will not. 3 lights overflowed from the father's body. Those lights became Ray, the god of sight, I, the god of heart, and Hai, the god of voice. So, do you know what I mean? Like, where I think what happened is that the people who are writing this had the mandate that they have to use these certain Pokemon, and this is probably iterations of what they're being told that they have to use in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Oz said this to the 3 gods: "Incarnations of the beloved, bring blessings upon this world. When Ray awakened, everything appeared there. Colors and features were born. When I made a wish, everything was felt there. A sense of calm spread through the land. When Hai shouted, everything trembled there. Sounds of happiness began to reverb through the land. The 3 gods rushed about everywhere, scattering their divine blessings. Happiness filled the world. Oz offered a prayer to the body of the giant. The body transformed into a giant mountain. Oz said this to Aya and Ia: "Both of you, watch over this world from this place, which is higher than anywhere else. Pour out your light and set time free." Oz then ascended to the heavens. Aya and Ia let out a loud cry and disappeared into the giant mountain. Yeah. Can I do one more? It shows a different aspect of the way that they're thinking about Pokemon and people in conflict. And, like, it becomes very clear that they have not figured out what they're going to do.
Go for it.
Back then, the world was still a single continent. People, Pokemon, the wind running through the hills, the morning dew dropping from the leaves, all things were equal. All things in the world were friends, were food, were family. I just wanted to mention it for that. Okay. We're friends, we're food, we're family.
Oh my god.
But after a long time, people forgot little by little their respect for the gods and nature and their friendship with Pokemon. Eventually, seeking glory and riches and fought each other and started wars. They felled trees and dug into mountains. They shaved rocks and they built weapons. They dirtied the water to wash off their bloody blades. Weak Pokemon lost their places to live and died one after another. Strong Pokemon died, used as tools for war. Seeing that, the absolute divinity, Oz was greatly angered and saddened. And then basically a lot of this stuff is just like, yep, God is punishing you.
We haven't even gotten into, like, if we're equating Pokemon and people, how do we explain that people domesticate Pokemon?
Right? Like, see, that's the thing, where it's like, I think one of the things that they're trying to figure out here is, what is the balance of people and Pokemon, and how did people end up, like, taming Pokemon? Is this friendship? Is this, like, people were bad to Pokemon and now need to be good to Pokemon? Is it that Pokemon and people are the same thing, and that honestly, like, Pokemon are just helping people out? All of that stuff, I think, is one thing that they're trying to figure out a cosmology for. And then this is also with the fact that Pokemon are the gods of this universe. Yeah. So there's, like, kind of like a weird sandwich effect of, like, Pokemon are used by people as tools. Pokemon are God. People just exist kind of sandwiched between these two things.
Also in the games, like, you can catch, like, Arceus, Dialga, Palkia, Giratina, and it's like, we have domesticated God.
Imagine, like, running into, like, a 10-year-old, and you're going into Pokemon battle with him, and he just pulls out God. And you're just kind of like, I guess.
That's literally what happens, though. And then you can kill God.
I would just give that kid my money and leave.
Do we want to talk about the bad?
There's a part of me that's like, oh god, we're at an hour. We have no time to talk about Pokemon fucking. And also that Pokemon fucking should be a Patreon episode. but I feel like it's too late and we're into it.
Yeah, I feel like we can't do that to
people. We can't do that to people. We need to give them the goods right now. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about Pokemon fucking, and then I think this should actually be its own separate episode where we just go through all of these. And maybe that's on Patreon, maybe that's on here, depending on how it's interesting. But there's no going around it. Today we're talking about people fucking Pokemon. I just want to say that regrettably, people do write Pokemon/people fic on AO3. It is graphic. On the first page, if you sort by kudos of Pokemon and explicit, you do get a Teen Wolf crossover with Pokemon, where one of the Teen Wolf characters is a Pokemon breeder, and you don't want to know what that means because...
No!
And that's like 1,000 kudos. It's not even well written. I went to go read it.
I'm gonna regret asking this.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice a trend of which Pokemon are mentioned on AO3?
I'm gonna be real. Like, I did not look deep in depth into this because I was kind of like, I'm cooking my brain. I would say that the same trends with like other degen parentheses affection parentheses question mark fic is where there is definitely like canine Pokemon.
Oh, no.
And like, you know, the tentacle porn type beat.
No.
That's all I'm gonna say about it. But that stuff is way worse than the stuff that is going viral right now. The stuff that's going viral right now is that people are saying that Typhlosion's a predator. The reason that they're saying that is between about 10 to 20 stories, depending on how you want to cut it. A lot of these were very much like iterations of the same story, and some of them haven't been translated yet, of people and Pokemon having relations in the deep past. Relations being not just fucking, but some of these stories are really just about like a guy and a Pokemon experienced like, you know, some hardship together, or like you were supposed to do these things and then you didn't do them, and now all of the women in your family have turned into Ponytas, that sort of thing. Like, it is very much in this vein of like ancient mythology of like various cultures. And what's really interesting here is that they are trying to explore very different aspects of human and Pokemon relationships. And a lot of them start with like saying that there's a theme here that they're trying to portray. So these are clearly meant as flavor text to like build out the world of Pokemon. For example, the one with Octillery is supposed to be about the collapse of culture and relationships. The first thing that people are going to read, though, is a guy fucking an Octillery.
Yeah, and it's also just like, particularly that it's Octillery. It's like, Octillery is an octopus with a mouth that is hollow and long.
Suck on that thing.
So like
well, okay, so like the Octillery thing I think makes more sense in the context of Japan, because there's a famous woodcut called The Fisherman's Wife, which is about a woman getting pleasured by an octopus.
Oh.
Yeah. So like all of the stuff is in reference to existing mythology or in existing mythological context. I think the other thing that we're suffering from here is that we're reading machine translations that make everything sound much more blunt than it is. So let's talk about Typhlosion. I feel like let's just talk about Typhlosion and we'll leave the rest for a different episode. I'm not going to read the whole thing here because I've spent too long reading Pokemon cosmology myths. But the Typhlosion story is essentially about a woman who gets essentially like, the machine translation makes it seem like she got abducted by a Typhlosion. Yeah. And basically becomes his wife and then has his kid and then gets taken back to her family, and then they're all like, hey man, that's fucked. We're going to throw stones at you.
Yeah. They also make it seem like a Phantom of the Opera kind of thing, where the Typhlosion looks like a person in the day and a Typhlosion at the night.
That makes it seem more mythological to me, right? Because there's a lot of stories about like, hey man, don't look at me at this time. I will turn into something else. And then the guy always looks at it and then they're like, ah, fuck, my wife's a snail.
Yeah.
Or like, ah, fuck, my wife's some sort of crane bird thing. And now she's got to go because I broke the rules of the contract. Or like, two myths that people pointed out is that there's a type of like badger yokai. And I forget if it was Julia that told us about this or if it was like me Googling stuff. But
I know Julia mentioned yokai.
Yeah. And like where yokai a lot of the time can disguise himself in human form. And yokai, for those who don't know, are like Japanese spirits. And then there's also like a Native American bear myth, like an indigenous one that somebody pointed to being like, hey, this is actually probably what they were pointing at, which is about a woman who like essentially berates like some bears, and the bears are like, bro, what the fuck? And then they abduct her and they whisk her away to the bear village. And then she ends up being a prisoner, but then becoming like basically marrying one of the bears. And like, I think one of the problems here is that the way that these Pokemon myths are describing relationships, like both in the sense of like people fucking and also in the sense of like people having a relationship, are very much alluded to in a way that doesn't translate well through the machine, and also in a way where it's clear that this is supposed to be like metaphor illusions type shit, and that's creating a lot of the confusion. I guess what I'm getting at here is that on the internet backlash meme of it all, a lot of this is just based on the fact that it's funny to talk about Pokemon humans fucking, but it's not necessarily representative of what is actually in the actual text.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it also is like, we're talking about a children's game, and it's naturally going to be more surprising when, like when you hear, like, oh, there's, like, this ancient myth involving, like, an octopus and a woman. It's like, that is disturbing, but, like, yeah, people tell stories, and I'm sure, yeah, people talked about that thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
But then when it's an octillery.
And when it's an octillery, like, I think part of this is also people feeling like their childhood is getting, like, sort of like, oh god, look at the dark shit that Game Freak was making. Like, truly putting the freak in Game Freak. But none of this actually made it to light. And I do think it's interesting that, like, a lot of the concepts that they're talking about here are, like, darker or more serious or more in the vein of, like, serious mythology or, like weird, freaky looking, like, pixel art and stuff like that, where they were definitely, like, trying to push it in a darker direction, but end up making a children's game. Not in a good way or a bad way, but it's really interesting that they were thinking about this stuff. The other thing I wanted to note is that people have really been zeroing in on the freaky shit. When, for example, like, there is a Wurmple, like, little, like, mythology piece, which is literally just about, like, a Wurmple and, like, a different bug Pokemon that I ran this through Google Translate. It did not let me figure out what the other bug Pokemon is, where they basically undergo metamorphosis.
Aw.
And
maybe Caterpie.
It's probably Caterpie, where they, like, freak, like, one of the Wurmple is like, oh no, my boy, he's turned into something else. Is this okay? Oh no, I'm turning into something else, but we both turned into something beautiful. And the theme there is strength of friendship through change. So there is very much, like, stuff that's cute there, but everyone is like, yo, look at Typhlosion. I don't have any, like, strong insight here other than that's kind of interesting seeing how people react to media from their childhood being reinterpreted, essentially.
My reaction isn't like, oh no, my childhood, because I think that's kind of stupid when people do that. Like, get over yourself. These myths conjure a lot of questions, and it's also unclear within the universe of Pokemon, is this canon, or are these myths in the same way that we have myths like the Crane Wife? Like, is this the Pokemon version of that? Like, told within... Like, is it a myth within the context of the game?
Right. And you know what I think is also a lot of these myths are about people being shitty to Pokemon and then getting some sort of revenge or, like, feeling sad about it after. And you know what I think this is? I think it's also, like, trying to tell kids, like, hey, be nice to your Pokemon. You know what I mean? Like, because these are kids who are, like, using these animals to battle. And I think part of it is literally them being like, hey, you should be cool to your Pokemon. Have you considered being cool to your Pokemon?
Yeah.
And it's, anyway, that's all I got for you. We should do an extra episode at some point about, let's run through all of these myths, because I did, for the love of God, I did read so much about Pokemon and people fucking.
What have we learned today?
I don't know that we've learned anything. That's a lie. I think we learned about game development.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be real, I was expecting the Typhlosion story to be way more fucked up from the way the internet talked about it, so I think what we've learned here is that if you actually go do your research, most things are, like, relatively reasonable. And that Pokemon... more thought went into Pokemon than I thought it did. That's all I got for you.
You heard it from Isabel. The Typhlosion story is reasonable.
No! Okay, that's the end of it.